I am reminded of Obi-Wan when he says, from a certain point of view, because everything about episode 3 is about the opposing viewpoints of both of the parties involved and how each of them kind of has a valid reason for believing the way that they do. And that's the difficult part about having opposing viewpoints, even when they're not necessarily, in combat with each other, if that makes sense. Anyway, most people have probably seen this episode already because I'm coming to it late because I was on the road for the past few weeks. But just in case, spoiler alert, I'm not going to hold Nathan back as we get into this episode. Um, so we're introduced to a new coven of witches, and one of the things I really appreciate, which I've talked about in the first episode with the High Republic, is that Disney has a chance to make their own story, right? They're not tied to any specific canon because everything related to the Skywalker saga has already been done with Disney, and everything they've done has, for the past few years, been tied into that. And now they're establishing new canon for the High Republic era, which is great. It's their chance to take the IP that they bought and paid for and do something new and different with it, something that's not tied to all the other stuff that people know from the past, 40 years. I'm on board for that. I'm happy with that because we're still getting stuff tied to the Skywalker saga and things that I enjoy. Video games, Star Wars Outlaws is coming up. We got the Mandalorian Grogu movie. We got more Boba Fett stuff. We got another season of Ahsoka. We got more stuff coming. I'm happy. It's great. It's a great time to be a Star Wars fan. Um, New Coven of Witches, they kind of have a vague background, but we do get the knowledge drop that the mother of this coven somehow created the twins and implanted them into another woman from the coven who carried them to term. So there was no father, which gives us ties to Anakin somewhat, but also is kind of like, okay, well, what exactly did she do? There's mention of, in my mind, I'm wondering if it had to do something with a blood sacrifice. I don't know, but they seem to be a pacifist group of witches who are off living in their own little corner of the galaxy, um, and raising these girls and living in peace somewhere where the Jedi won't find them. Unfortunately, the Jedi do find them. And this whole episode revolves around the twins having to make a choice. Um, the Jedi kind of overstepping their bounds here by being on a planet that's not under Republic jurisdiction, but they're in pursuit of these children who they think have been, brainwashed and they want them to be tested and everything else. And so May is very much already in the Coven mentality, um, and Osha's not. Osha wants something else. And they get to the point where they're doing the ritual, and May's happy to accept. She wants to be a part of this. She wants to be like her mother. Um, she gets the mark, which comes from the Force, which in this case is they call it the thread. But Osha's not having it. She's like, I just don't know. And at that moment, the Jedi show up, and there's a tense discussion. It almost goes poorly, because all the mother wants to do is protect her children and keep them safe. And they have been persecuted by the Jedi in the past, but they're on a planet where the Republic doesn't have authority, and there doesn't appear to be. I just heard a noise. I think it's my wife cutting open a bag of cat food. So I had to pause for a minute. Um, Terse discussion here, right? And members of the Coven don't want the children to have any. They don't want the Jedi to be here. They're willing to fight against the Jedi, which mirrors the discussion made about there being some sort of a dark past where the Jedi have pursued them and persecuted them before. So the Jedi are overstepping their bounds here a little bit, which may be the fault of the Master, her, who is leading him and the Wookiee Jedi and the other guy, um, Torben, I think is his name, in pursuit of these children, for better or for worse. But at the end of the day, the mother's like, hey, my kids have the right to do what they want to do, even though the Covenant's not too happy about that. And she agrees to let the kids be tested. Now, they come up with a plan to lie to the Jedi so that the kids don't have to leave. And May's happy to go along with that, but she's not. And May basically says, if you don't do this, I'm going to hate you, blah, 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 blah. And of course, when they get into the ship, they discover that she is, in fact, wanting to tell the truth, but she's scared to tell the truth. They catch her in a lie, And then there's this discussion about, hey, if you want to do this, you should have the courage to, do it and take charge of your destiny. And she ultimately says that she wants to become a Jedi. And when she gets off the ship and her sister's waiting for her, May is extremely upset and devastated. And when they go back to the coven, they confront the coven with this, and the mother is like, "Okay, May, you go with them. I need to talk to Oshi alone here." And they have a heart to heart, and at the end of it, the mother is like, "You need to go do what you want to do. I'm okay with this." Gives her a hug and gives her her blessing, but says ultimately we will need to discuss within the coven, and your wishes will be given consideration. Unfortunately, this is when Bay apparently has completely fallen to the dark side at a very young age and is so pissed off at her sister that she sets fire to the door of the room and is like, "I'm not going to let you leave. I'm going to kill you." And it just kind of goes south from there because the fire spreads and it blows up basically the whole base and kills the mom and the entire coven. And there's a moment where he's coming to the rescue, and May and Shin are there, and they're having a across the bridge scene with each other, and she wants to save May, but she can't, and May falls into the fire, but he saves her, and he saves O'Shea, and then at that point, they're back on the ship, and she's incredibly traumatized, and he says that he's going to be taking her on as his Padawan. Everything about this episode, because like the Jedi have a reason to be here. Like they are doing what they believe is right for these children, which is to give them the choice. And it's they aren't trying to forcefully take the children. They are kind of not they're poking their noses where it's not wanted, but they're doing it because it's kind of like missionaries who go to other countries and like they have good intentions, but they might not necessarily be doing the right thing because they're not respecting the cultures and the wishes of the people that live there. But ultimately, the witches are like they're pacifists apparently, although willing to defend themselves if necessary. But the mother is definitely a pacifist. At the end of the day, wants to let her child go off, but she also, is telling her child a lie at the beginning because she's like, I really just want to keep my family safe. I created these creatures out of the threads, which I think is great. I think it's great to have another interpretation of the Force, because in a galaxy, a galaxy is massive. It would stand to reason that different cultures might call the Force different things, especially if they're on some weird outer rim place where the Republic doesn't exist. Um, and then when the Republic comes to colonize, they're discovered, and then there's the tension between the Force wielders and then the people who have grown up calling it the Thread. Like I could totally see how that comes into play here with the way they go to planets and explore. Um, so there's some interesting discussion points to be had around this episode. I highly enjoyed it. It was a very visually stunning episode too, in terms of the backdrops of the planet and the weird looking like moons and planets in the background when they're doing the ritual at night. And I like the fact that they're up on some sort of a mountaintop with like a ruined structure behind them. I don't know. I just thought the visuals were really cool. I loved the Jedi ship that they had where they had set up camp. Can't wait to see more. I am catching up in the episodes, so make sure to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you never miss an update, because I will be diving into the next episode. I'm going to try to get up to speed with episodes 4 and 5 before episode 6 comes out. It might not happen, but I'm going to try diligently to do so now that I'm home back at the office. May the force be with you, everyone. See you next time.